Story 1. BF cheated and got my sis pregnant, so I left him. But mom insisted I forgive them, so I cut my family off for years. After reconciling, I found out mom had been sleeping with my ex's dad. This incident dates back to 14 years ago when I was still in high school. We were a close-knit group of 3 folks. I, Becky, and Rob. 17F, and 18F back then. Rob had to repeat a year when his parents moved back to the States from Prague, so we 3 were in the same class. More than friends, we were a family. Our fathers were best friends. While my dad and Becky's dad settled here after their college, Rob's father moved to Prague for work, but they moved back when Rob was 7. Becky and I had known each other ever since we were in diapers. Rob became our friend when we were 6, and Rob was 7, so we had known each other since ever. Becky, Rob, and I pledged to be lifelong friends, just like our parents. Rob and I started dating when I was 15. It was not just a teenage fling. We dated for 2 years and we were kind of serious, at least I was, and he pretended that he was too. We planned on enrolling in the same college and then getting married. People used to call Becky the third wheel. In actual fact, Becky and I were so close that Rob said he felt like third wheeling between us. Perhaps I was the extra wheel. I'll get to it eventually. When we were 17, Becky got knocked up. She was so terrified that she locked herself up in the school's washroom. I was horrified too to see those 2 pink lines. I asked her who the guy was. She didn't say anything. All she did was cry and dread about her parents' reaction to this. She tested it twice in front of me in order to calm her down. I asked her to see a doctor first before telling her parents. I took her to the doctor. Her pregnancy was confirmed. She was so scared of her parents that she kept it hidden for almost a month. That 1 month was equally tough for me. I brought her supplements, ensured that she had a proper meal, got her snacks and juices, and lent her a shoulder to cry on. She confided in me about her fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. I was her only support, yet she was not willing to reveal the guy's name despite her keeping that a secret. I supported her through all means. I finally convinced her to speak to her parents before it became evident. She asked me to be with her when she told them. I agreed to be game. It was not unusual for our parents to see us bailing each other out. Her parents thought it was one such matter. The moment she revealed that she was pregnant, her parents called up mine to share their distress. She didn't reveal the guy's name even in front of the parents. She cried so profusely that my parents asked her parents to calm down and give time to Becky to confide in them. 2 days later, my mom tells me not to visit Becky so often and that I should focus on my studies rather than being a babysitter to my friend. This restriction was not like, Becky is bad company for you, because she was very protective towards her. A week later, I got to know why she was asking me to stay away from Becky. Not to protect me, but to protect her. That evening, I randomly showed up at Becky's. There I found Rob with his parents. Both Becky and Rob were crying. Even my parents were present there. As soon as my mother saw me, she rushed to me and asked me to go home. I asked her what's the matter. She said, "None of your business." Seeing me, Rob and Becky both got astonished, and I instantly understood what's the matter. I screamed at them, "The baby is Rob's. You both were fooling around behind my back." They both rushed to me and kept saying, "We can explain." I said, "No explanation. The truth is out and open. My boyfriend and my best friend are hooking up behind my back. And my best friend is having his baby." My parents dragged me out from there because I was screaming out so loud. I came home and locked up myself. I cried for days, curling up inside my bed. It was beyond heartbreaking. I trusted her blindly and supported her by all means in tough times, while she was my boyfriend in her backyard. The worst part was everyone was so occupied with caring for the would-be mama that no one even thought about my pain. Surely, Becky and Rob tried to reach out to me, but I slammed the door on their face. I blocked both of them on all social media platforms. It was understandable for Becky's and Rob's parents to not care about my heartbreak, but even my parents were least empathetic about it. My mom was like, "Get over it. Be happy. Your best friend is going to have a baby. You'll be a fun and cute little munchkin." She acted so delusional. I mean, my best friend is carrying my boyfriend's baby, and she wants me to be happy about that? She said, "Oh, come on. Don't spoil this for everyone. All of us are so happy to welcome the baby into our lives. Don't ruin that. It's not a big deal for Rob to sleep with your friend. It's very common in teenage years. Don't take it to your heart. I'm sure you'll soon find another loving boyfriend." She winked and said, "More handsome and tall than Rob." My mental condition got worse. I couldn't place my finger on when this would have happened, and how could I not see that coming? No one was there for me to confide in. My sister, 15F back then, was dating Becky's brother, so she was definitely on her side. When I cried in front of her, she said, "How could you not guess that Rob was the dad? You three are always together. If any of you two are having a baby, it has to be Rob's." She also preached me the same thing. Move on. Don't spoil our relationship with them. School was the worst. Rob and Becky had dropped out. Rob couldn't take the bully, and Becky dropped out for obvious reasons. I had no friends besides these two losers, and everyone in the school knew that me and Rob were dating. Then Rob made Becky pregnant, and they both dropped out, leaving me at the mercy of the bullies. My family was more concerned about their friendship with Becky's and Rob's parents than about my feelings. Dad was still better. He used to check on me sometimes, but Mom was worst. She was supplying Becky with handmade cookies while I was crying and sulking in my room. She basically belittled and laughed at my feelings. As her pregnancy grew, my condition became worse. It was just so difficult to see Rob taking Becky for walks, for checkups, and for dates to ease her anxiety. My family asked me to look away from them and move on. I don't know how I could possibly move on. I mean, they both were my neighbors. It was not only difficult but impossible to not run into one of them at least once a day. On top of that, my family was constantly engaged in the conversation about their baby. Apparently, they called themselves to be would-be grandparents. Yeah, our families have been close. If she was having a baby with anyone else, I would have shared the same happiness as them, but not anymore. My mental state went for a toss. It got so bad that on the day of my final exams at high school, I packed my bag to run away from home. I've been planning for this ever since their baby-making news came out. I was saving up for it. I had sold all my books, comics, gadgets, watches, and whatever little jewelry I owned. I told I was going on a trek with my friends. My family was so done with my sulking that they didn't ask anything and said, "Sure, have fun." I left home never to come back again. I went to the next town, lived in a hostel, and waited tables for a living. It was stressful with immense uncertainty about the future, but I felt so much better than to be at home. After a month, my parents started contacting me, asking me when I would return home. I had changed my number. They emailed me. I blocked them from there too. They used others' email IDs to write me, so I told my sister that I was not returning home ever and asked them not to contact me. They were emailing me from other IDs, so I changed that too. That was it. I don't know what did they do to find me. Living alone was not hunky-dory, but eventually I navigated. I waited tables for 2 years, then took up a receptionist for another year, and lastly landed up a sales job which lasted for 3 years. I met my husband when I was working in sales. He was a marketing guy. We both connected over our troubled family issues. He lost his mom at an early age, and his dad married a teenage girl of his age and forced him to call her mom. Other gaslighting and verbal abuse followed until he ran away from home. We had known each other for just a year when he said he wanted to fund my college education, which I can pay him back later. He wanted me to do better in life. I accepted his offer and went to college. I continued to work part-time during college to take care of my other expenses. I studied accounting and grabbed a decent-paying job right after my graduation. On my first day after work, he proposed to me, and we got married a year later. We have a son now. Life is good. A month ago, we went to Disneyland, and there we bumped into my sister who was there with her family. She had married Becky's brother and has a son with him. I hugged her son, and the moment was so surreal. I hugged my sister and we cried. She hated me for ghosting her. She and her husband, Becky's brother, both apologized for not supporting me enough. I said, "Let the bygone be bygone, and let's enjoy the trip." We all enjoyed like a family. I exchanged contacts with her. She made me promise to stay in touch with her. Now she went home and told Mom about bumping into me. She texted me that Mom is asking for my number. I was still not sure if I want to get in touch with her. My husband advised me to make peace with my family and move on, so I gave the green signal to my sister about sharing my number. Just an hour later to that, I got a call from my mother. She was sobbing over the call. She relented her mistakes. She said she was sorry that I had to go through all of this. She said she was yearning to meet her grandchild. She is insisting me to visit home with my family. While I didn't say yes or no yet, I'm thinking what to do. Edit. I missed one important point. My sister was showing me the pictures of my brother's children, and while scrolling through the gallery, I stumbled upon her family picture. It had Becky and Rob. My sister told me Becky and Rob got married 4 years after I ran away from home. They had 2 more boys apart from the first girl baby. I just smiled and said nothing. She wanted to say more about them, but seeing me not interested, she backed off. Update 1. Hey guys. Sorry for not updating this earlier. Let me start from where I left. After a lot of contemplation, I went to meet my family. My parents hugged me and cried. Yeah, they apologized for neglecting my feelings. It was a bittersweet moment for us. My sister was there with her husband and kids. Her husband, Becky's brother, also apologized to me and requested me to be in touch. It was so nice to meet them all. We all grew up together like a family. My brother, who was 10 when I left, is also married now and has a 2-month-old infant. It felt so good to hold and play with my nieces and nephews. We went there for a 2-day trip. The first day was so emotional and beautiful in its own way. My parents met my husband and my son, who was so delighted to meet his grandparents. On the second day, I was casually chit-chatting with my sister, and my mom comes in and says, "See, I told you would find a better man than Rob, and see, you did find such a good husband. You unnecessarily blew up the entire situation." My sister gave her a look and asked her to stop, but who could stop her? She continued, "Oh, that's okay. Charlie me is over her past now. Look how happy she is in her life." I said, "Surely I am." She sat beside me and said, "Then why not make peace with the past? Forgive everyone and move on." I said, "I did make peace with the past, and I have forgiven you all." She said she didn't mean them but Rob and Becky. She wanted me to forgive them and get into talking terms with them so that we all can hang out as a family like before. I said, "Why do you want me to do that? You guys still hang out with them without me." She said, "It embarrasses them that I don't talk to their children, Becky and Rob. But their children are so nice to my parents." I said, "But your other 2 children, my brother and my sister, are nice to your friends. Be happy with that. Why bother me?" She insisted that I forgive Becky and Rob and become their friends again. I said, "No way, and it is none of your business." She started preaching me the importance of forgiveness and Jesus stuff. Then she said, "Becky wants to meet you and your husband. Can I call her for dinner?" I said, "If you do that, I'm leaving the house now and never coming back." At this point, my siblings also got pissed off at Mom that why she told Becky about my visit. To her defense, Mom said, "Becky's dad saw me through the window, and he might have told Becky, and then Becky called Mom and requested her to patch me up with them." I got so furious at that lame excuse that I stood up and went inside my room. My sister followed me inside the room and said, "Mom has a weird obsession with Becky's family. I mean, yeah, they all are friends from 4 decades. But the way Mom cares to keep the friendship smooth, it looks so fishy now." I asked her what made her say so. She said, "Last year, she and her husband were going through a turbulence in their relationship. My sister casually mentioned to Mom that if her husband continues his gaslighting habit, she might divorce him. Mom lost it and said outrightly that there would be no divorce whatever happens. Sister has to adjust even if cheated on her because we cannot ruin their friendship. Sounds weird. Me and my sister looked back in the past and realized Mom had always been like this. She always loved Becky and her brother more than us. Back then, we never complained about this because Becky was my best friend, and her brother was my sister's boyfriend. Discussion over. We came back home. I almost forgot about this talk with my sister last week. My husband showed me a video where a middle-aged couple is making out at a bar. That couple is no one but my mother with Becky's dad. Yes, it blew my mind. My mother's obsession with keeping a good relationship with them makes so much sense now. They can hang out anytime they want. My husband went next town, not my hometown, for a work trip, and there he saw them. He recognized that it was Mom, but didn't recognize that the man was Becky's dad. He recorded it to show it to me because there was no way I would have believed him without the video. After seeing the video, I was choking. I really needed to spit that out, so I called my sister and asked her to come down next day. She sensed it was urgent, and she rushed. I showed her the video, and she is equally shocked. My sister has not told her husband yet because he would be equally freaked out. Now we are at a fix. What do we do now? Do we tell Dad about this? Or should we confront Mom and ask her to mend her ways? But wouldn't that be cheating on Dad again? It's getting complicated. Update 2. My parents are getting divorced. Yes, for obvious reasons. My sister and I spent weeks thinking what to do. I at least could discuss it with my husband and vent out. But my sister's condition was worse. She can't even discuss that with her husband. Her anxiety and silence were spoiling her relationship. We had to do something, so we did what any other siblings in the world would do. We told our brother, thinking he might come up with a better idea to deal with the situation. On seeing the video, he absolutely lost it. He went straight to Mom and confronted her in front of Dad. She denied it, and he rubbed the video on her face. I don't know if it was wise or foolish of us to involve him, but at least he offloaded our burden. Brother told us that he was absolutely pissed with Mom all his life because she had been ignoring him in front of Becky and her brother. He said he hated me and my sister because of our closeness with that family, but when he grew up, our closeness made sense, but Mom's didn't. Dad and my brother almost barged into their house and showed the video to Becky's mom, who broke down on seeing her husband making out with our mother. To simplify the matter to you guys, Mom was basically sleeping with Dad's best friend. Yeah, by then everyone got to know the truth, including Rob and his parents. Dad and Becky's mom became a team and grilled Mom and Becky's dad. We wanted to be neutral, but we couldn't after knowing that they had been fooling around ever since we were a child. Initially, they claimed it had started recently as a midlife crisis, but their stories were inconsistent. Dad threatened to throw her out of the house right away. Then they spoke the truth of cheating for over 25 years. Yes, they have been doing this under everyone's nose, and no one ever suspected them. Dad tried to hold the fort for the sake of the family, but he grew miserable. One day he just showed up at my door, hugged me, and cried like a baby. He said now he understood what pain I must have gone through when my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. Mom did the exact same thing with Dad, sleeping with his best friend. It's terrible. It's like getting stabbed from both ends. Dad called all three of us, me, my sister, and my brother, for a meeting. He said he was sorry, but he could not forgive Mom and live with her anymore, pretending nothing happened. Mom was telling him the same thing she told me. Forgive and move on. Dad was proceeding for a divorce, and before that, he wanted to inform us, all three of us, to let our support to him that we are with him whatever he decides. Apparently, when Mom got to know that Dad is going to serve her, she blacked out. She pleaded with him to give her one last chance for the sake of the family. I was not present at that time, but my sister was, and she gave Mom a piece of her mind. It was one huge drama in the family. Dad ultimately got her served and moved out. A similar story happened with Becky's parents. Her mom has filed for a divorce, and she has also moved out of the house. So in my house, Mom is alone, and in her house, her dad is alone. They might just move in together. Who knows? Blessing and disguise for them. Who knows? They both might have been waiting to live together anyways. I'm out of this. I have my own family to care for. These divorces have been rough on my sister because her both side of the family is affected. She and her husband are going through tough times. I hope their relationship doesn't suffer in between all this, and they sail through this rough patch. Thanks for all the love. I'll update the thread if anything develops. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Hey, Redditors, settle down, get comfy, cause this is about to be a long ride. I found out my wife had been cheating on me for about 4 years, and even went as far as to leave our son in the hospital just so she could go have fun with her affair partner. My world and everything I had believed in came crashing down. Of course, I couldn't let it go, so I decided to ruin her life and make her regret ever cheating. I am 33M, and my wife, Na, is 32F. We've been married for 11 years, so a long time. We have 2 kids, Star, who is 12F, and Neo, who was 6M. My wife and I met at her cousin's wedding when she was 19, and I was 20. It was love at first sight. You know that feeling you get when you meet someone for the first time, and you just know that you're going to spend the rest of your life with that person? Yes, that was what I felt when I saw Na. Even though we were really young, we got married a year later after she got pregnant with our daughter, Star. I always knew I was going to marry Na, so when she said she was pregnant, I didn't mind. In fact, I was happy. Becoming a father is one of the biggest joys I ever experienced. My parents, on the other hand, weren't happy, and they thought that she had baby-trapped me. I didn't listen to my parents and brush them off because I knew my parents as proud upper-class people. I say upper-class because that's what my parents like to call themselves, lol. I come from generational wealth and Na does not. So my parents believed that if I were ever to get married, I would get married to someone from an upper-class family. My parents also believed that Na had baby-trapped me because I had told them Na and I were really surprised when she had gotten pregnant. She had an IUD, but we brushed it off because we knew that an IUD wasn't 100% guaranteed. My parents, on the other hand, were adamant about the fact that she had baby-trapped me. They believed she was after the money, and I laughed it off and called them crazy. I'm an only child, and so I stand to inherit everything. Looking back now, I realized my parents were right, and if I could turn back the hands of the clock, I would have listened to them. My parents, though, refused to have anything to do with the wedding unless Na signed a prenup to avoid arguments in case it was not a big deal, and she willingly signed. We had a destination wedding because it had always been Na's dream. I was more of a low-key person. There's this nonchalance that comes with being born into wealth, I guess. I'd gotten used to it, and it no longer turned my head. Life had been that way right from the day I was born, so why would it freak me now? Na, on the other hand, came from a poor home, so she wasn't really used to it. She wanted a big wedding, and that was what we had. I didn't really care as long as she was happy, and so I went ahead with whatever she wanted. My parents paid for the wedding because Na and I couldn't afford it as we were both still students. Despite the fact that my parents disliked Na, I had already made up my mind to marry her, and they had no choice but to attend and pay for the wedding, as it was either they paid or I would pay for it out of my trust fund, and they didn't want that. My parents believed that if I paid for it out of my trust fund, I would blow away all the cash. It was a funny and absurd thought because my trust fund held millions. I was what you would call a trust fund baby, lol. But anyways, our wedding went on. Apart from the occasional snide remarks from Na's parents and family, who felt that my parents and family members were proud, and then eventually a full-blown quarrel between them, lol, the marriage went on without a hitch. The first few years of marriage, Na and I busied ourselves with college and taking care of our daughter, Star. And after we graduated, things eased up a bit. I started working for my dad and was earning close to 7 figures a year. That made me the sole provider in the house, which I didn't mind. Na didn't want to be a full-time housewife, and so she got a really flex job at a locally owned business that paid well and also allowed her time for the kids. One night, while we were getting ready for bed, Na approached me and said she wanted to talk about something sensitive. I told her to go ahead, and then she broached the topic of threesomes. I was shocked, as that was something we had both discussed and agreed that we would never involve ourselves in. We had both agreed that we would never involve ourselves in it as we didn't want the fear that our partner was cheating on us with the other person behind our back. Besides, our sex life was very active and so there was no need for that, or so I thought. Na then told me she already had someone in mind and that she thought it would be a good experience for us. I asked her who she had in mind, and she mentioned Jason, a friend of hers who was at our wedding. He was a high school friend of hers. He and Na were close but not overly close as to invoke jealousy, or so I thought, lol. She told me he was bisexual and that she thought he would be down for it. I reminded her of our agreement and that I didn't want to involve myself in that as I felt it wouldn't go down well for our marriage. I noticed that she was very sad about my refusal, but I didn't think too much of it. She nodded and told me that she had just wanted to try broaching the topic with me and that she wouldn't force me. She told me that any time I changed my mind, she would be able to talk to him. I told her that I didn't think I would ever change my mind, and she said that was also fine, and the conversation ended. About a month ago, my wife was at work, and I also was at work. Our kids were home with the nanny. My son has a severe peanut allergy, so he can't eat anything like whole peanuts, peanut butter, peanut oil, processed foods that were made with peanuts, stuff like that. So we generally try to avoid them. Ironically, my daughter has a liking for peanut, and so she tends to keep her snacks locked in a mini fridge in her room, so my son doesn't have access to them. My son knows not to eat peanuts, but he might not know if a processed food or chocolate and sweets contains traces of peanut. So again, better safe than sorry. According to the story the babysitter and my kids told me about what happened, my daughter took a chocolate snack that contained traces of peanuts in them and was eating it. However, she got distracted when the nanny called her over to help with something, and so my daughter kept the snack in the main fridge so she would pick it up again after she was done. My son had gone to the fridge searching for a snack and had stumbled upon it, and then he ate it as he really liked chocolate. Plus, there's no rule in the house against eating others' leftover snacks in the fridge, as everyone is cool with it. He started having a severe allergy reaction, anaphylaxis, and for some reason unknown to me, his EpiPen was nowhere to be found. Trust me, I was shell-shocked when I heard it, as we usually stock up on EpiPens just in case. Anyways, the babysitter immediately called the ambulance, and then she and my daughter accompanied it to the hospital. The babysitter knows that my wife works more flexible hours than me and that for an emergency, my wife is usually the first to be called. She called my wife. My wife came to the hospital and left. According to what the babysitter told me, she had called my wife for hours without her picking up, and then when my wife picked up and came to the hospital to check up on our son, she muttered something about it not being serious enough and then told the babysitter that she had serious work to do and then left them in the hospital. The babysitter was a temporary one for a few hours as our nanny was feeling under the weather. It was about time for the babysitter to leave as she had initially told us that she couldn't babysit for the whole day today as a result of that. She was dumbfounded that my wife had left her at the hospital with no directions on what to do, and so she called me. I was in a meeting that was about rounding up, so I couldn't pick up her first call, but I called back as soon as I could once it ended, which was about 5 minutes later. She sounded so relieved when I picked up and filled me in on what happened. When I asked her about my wife, she told me my wife had said it wasn't serious and had left. I was surprised as my wife wasn't usually like that. I immediately went to the hospital to pay the babysitter and pick up my kids. Of course, I made sure to tip the babysitter. The doctor said my son's reaction wasn't severe as they had called an ambulance on time and that he was free to leave after a routine checkup that was soon done, and we left on our way home. I dropped by my wife's workplace to check in on her. So imagine my surprise when her boss told me my wife had clocked out hours ago, claiming an emergency. Inwardly, I was shell-shocked. Why had my wife clocked out of work? I wondered. I would have understood if I had met her at the hospital, but if it wasn't our son's allergy, then what was the emergency? I immediately became worried because I assumed that my wife must have been feeling under the weather and that must have made her clock out and go home. So folks, imagine my surprise when I found out that my wife was not at home, and when I called her phone, she told me she was at work. I immediately became suspicious. I decided not to call her out on her lie and tell her that I had just left her workplace 30 minutes ago. I had a feeling that if I called her out, she would just cover it up with another lie, and so I pretended as if I knew nothing, briefed her on what the doctor had said about our kid when she asked, and then told her I was waiting for her to come home. When my wife came home, I acted as if nothing was wrong. We joked, laughed, and ate dinner together, then put the kids to bed. We talked before she went to bed as I told her I had to work late, and she was okay with it because it was something I did sometimes. I waited for her to fall asleep, and in the meantime, I played games on my laptop in my office. Then, after a few hours, when I was sure she was asleep, I went to our room and took her phone. Unlocking her phone was easy as we knew each other's passwords. Looking back now, I realized that my wife had given me no reason to doubt that she was cheating. She covered up everything so well, from giving me reasonable lies about her absences to making sure I had all the passwords and access to all her devices, so I would never suspect she was hiding something. My wife was smart, but I was smarter. I unlocked her phone with her password and checked everything from her WhatsApp to her iMessage to her photos. I went through every texting app on her phone that I knew she used regularly. At first, I ignored Facebook because it wasn't something my wife used regularly. She used it sparsely to check updates on her old high school friends and distant family members, and also to make sure that people that didn't have her number or Gmail could reach her, like say an old high school buddy looking to reconnect. But realizing I had checked everything and I couldn't find anything or any evidence of her cheating or planning anything, I decided to check her Facebook, and on opening it I realized there was an app lock on it. I was immediately suspicious, and my sixth senses were tingling. Why was there an app lock on her Facebook when there wasn't any app lock on her other apps? I also didn't know the password to the app lock, and I couldn't even guess it. The security question was also one I didn't know the answer to. The security question was a single question. It said, "When is his birthday? Whose birthday?" I wondered. I tried my birthday, our son's birthday, her dad's birthday, and even her granddad's birthday, all to no avail. I couldn't guess who this his was. Just as I was on the verge of giving up, I remembered something. My wife had an iPad that she used to use, and her Facebook was probably still logged in on the iPad. She had gotten a new iPad and had given it to our kids, but I didn't remember her ever logging out her stuff out of the iPad. In fact, her old Gmail was still logged in on the iPad. Deciding to wait for the next day, I waited for my wife to go to work and my kids to school. Then I searched for the iPad after she had gotten the new one and then gave the iPad to the kids. Our kids had eventually discarded it when they got a new one. Regardless of that, the iPad was still fully functional, so I booted it back on and charged it. After waiting for the iPad to charge for a while, I unlocked it and checked Facebook. I was right. Her Facebook was still logged in on it. I immediately went to check her chats, and that was when my world came crashing down. My wife was cheating on me with a high school friend of hers called Jason, the same Jason she had suggested we do the threesomes with. Now it's all made sense. There were tons and tons of messages dating back as far as months ago. My wife had been in a relationship with this guy for a very long time. There were tons of messages between them mocking me, mocking Jason's wife, who was also pregnant. My wife had also been giving this guy money. She had been rejoining money from our joint accounts and giving it to this guy. I also saw messages of them arranging meeting points. Most of the time when my wife had told me she was going on a girls' trip, it was all a plot to go meet with this guy and spend time with him. My wife had even revealed to the guy that the only reason she got with me in the first place was because of the money and that she had baby-trapped me. My world had come crashing down. I was shocked and on the verge of tears. My wife that I loved so much that I also thought loved me. I thought we were the perfect couple. Of course, no one on earth is perfect, but we complemented each other so well. We understood each other. We communicated well. Everything was going so good. We genuinely enjoyed spending time with each other. So why was she doing this? I wondered. Our sex life was great, and she wasn't under any stress at work. She worked a very flexible job, and I was the sole provider of the household. She didn't pay any bills. I let her use her salary for whatever she wanted, and not even her salary but also any amount she wanted to take from our joint account. In fact, my wife was very frivolous, but I entertained her because I knew she didn't have much growing up, and this was her trying to compensate for it. I was going on a downward spiral. I kept reading the messages, even though they kept hurting me, because I wanted to hear everything she had said. At one point, something in me broke, and I realized that I would make sure she regretted this. Taking screenshots of as much messages as I could, I did just that and sent them to my phone. I decided to wait for a few more weeks and gather more evidence and also wait till they decided to meet again so I would show up at their meeting point and surprise them. My wife came home in the evening, and I acted as if everything was fine. I pretended as if I hadn't just found out that she had been cheating on me for a long time and had even been burning my money on the guy. No wonder she had suggested the threesomes. She had wanted a way to weasel Jason into our lives so she could be with him and not feel guilty. I pretended as if I was happy to see her and acted as if I didn't want to throw up and show her the text messages and ask her to explain herself. She was clueless and didn't even suspect a thing. Plan 1, the first stage, was in motion. I found a steady rhythm using the iPad to take screenshots of their adulterous conversation and send them to my phone and then deleting all traces of them from the iPad. I then got my lawyer to draft divorce papers that I would serve her with. It didn't even take them up to a week before they were planning to meet again. They decided to meet up at a hotel, and that was the thing that brought the second phase of my plan into motion. Up until that time, I had taken a few weeks off work by telling my dad I had a family emergency. I hadn't specifically told him what had happened because I knew my father would laugh in my face and read me the "I was right" act. He would reiterate that multiple times, and I knew that he would always bring it up in the future. I, however, didn't tell Na about the weeks I had taken off of work. I faked a cold in the morning and told her I would stay home and rest and work from home when I felt better. The kids were off to school too. I stayed at home and monitored their conversation through the iPad and took screenshots up until when Na arrived at the hotel before him and booked the hotel room. She then told him the hotel room's number she was in so he would head up to meet her without even asking at the front desk. I took more screenshots of the conversation and kept the iPad in my office. I then went to my printer and printed out a lot of the screenshots on physical paper and photocopied a lot of copies. I kept some in a huge brown envelope and held some in my hands. I drove to the hotel and headed up to the hotel room. I didn't even need to ask them at the front desk because I already knew the room number from their conversation on Facebook. I got to the room and then knocked on the door. Jason answered from inside, asking who it was, and I told him it was room service. He said he hadn't ordered room service, and I told him it was complimentary room service. I guess he must have decided that there was no harm in answering because he came up to the door to answer. The shock on his face was worth recording. He was shirtless and all he had on was a towel. On seeing me, his jaw had dropped wide open, almost comically LOL. I heard my wife's voice asking him what was wrong, and so I pushed him to the side softly so my wife would see it was me. She was lying on the bed and was only covering herself with the duvet. She was obviously naked under it. When she saw me, she almost turned to stone. One would have thought I was Medusa with the way she froze, LOL. I noticed I was on the verge of a breakdown and so threw the printouts of their conversations that I had held in my hand at them and left. I left in such a hurry that my wife didn't even regain her senses enough to chase after me. Before she could do that, I was already almost out of the hotel. I headed down to my car and cried for a solid 30 minutes. I'd had a few days to prepare for this, but nothing could ever truly prepare you to see this. I had thought I was over the grief and betrayal, but just seeing it physically broke me. I felt invalid and not enough. I inwardly resolved to make my wife and Jason's life a living hell. I drove home, and the moment I got home, I called my parents and asked them if they would be able to babysit the kids in such short notice because they didn't live far from the kids' school. I explained everything that had happened to them but made them promise not to tell anybody now because I wasn't yet ready to tell anybody. My parents were understood and accepted to babysit. They understood that I must be going through a lot emotionally now. My dad even pipped in that he would gloat about how he was right, but only after I had grieved and gotten over the hurt. I immediately packed enough clothes and stuff to last the kids for a few weeks and called the driver to come pick them up. My kids didn't follow the school bus, and they were picked up every day by our driver. I gave the luggages to the driver and instructed him to pick up the kids from school once they closed and drop them at my parents' house. I knew that that wasn't really cool as my kids would be very confused, but I resolved that I just needed to get through this week, and I would go get them the next week and explain everything to them in a way they would understand. In a few hours, Na came home crying and begging and pulling out the waterworks. She was begging me, saying that we would get through this together, to which I told her she was delusional. I told her I wanted her out of the house, but not before I went upstairs and got the divorce papers. I sat her down and told her we could do this two ways. 1, we could go to court and fight it out, or 2, she could sign the divorce papers and all would be well. If she chose the first option, I would make sure I exposed her and Jason to everybody, including Jason's wife and even Jason's boss and my wife's boss. I would also make sure I'd tell every single family member of each of our families. But if she chose the second option, I would not tell anybody, and if anybody asked me why we divorced, I would simply tell them that we had grown apart. She was shocked. She said she didn't want a divorce at all and wanted us to talk it out, but I told her that was out of the table and that that wasn't happening, even if a miracle occurred. She must have realized that I was serious because she told me to tell her the terms of the second option. She knew she would be in serious trouble if I told anybody. I smiled. The terms were simple. I would get child custody, and if she were to get visitation rights, it would be supervised visits. I was pretty sure supervised visits would not hold in court because she was not a criminal at all and did not pose any danger to the kids, but I was still willing to try. If supervised visits didn't hold, then she could get weekends. She would get no alimony or anything from me. We already had a prenup in place, so I wasn't really worried about how properties were going to be shared. I inwardly thanked my parents for the first time ever for insisting on a prenup. She was in tears. She spent the next 5 minutes trying to convince me, saying it was a mistake. She didn't mean it. She told me every excuse under the sun, but it was obvious I wasn't buying it. I told her to sign the divorce paper, but she refused, so I told her to leave the house. I didn't care if she refused to sign the divorce paper because I knew she would eventually cave in. That was how it always was. I know she will spend a few days thinking and trying to convince me, and then when she sees that I am adamant about the divorce, she will finally sign it. In the meantime, I have kicked her out. I gave her 5 minutes to pack her stuff and then told her to get out. She asked me what I would tell the kids, and I told her that I knew what to tell the kids and not to worry because I wouldn't tell the kids about her cheating. So yeah, here I am right now, alone at home, crying and drowning my sorrows with a bottle of wine. I honestly don't know what to do anymore. So I decided to come on Reddit to see if anyone had had a similar experience or something. I feel as if someone has pulled out the rock under my feet, as if everything I knew has been a lie. I honestly do not know where to go from here, but I'm trying my hardest to be strong. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Husband wanted to name our daughter Stuarta as the feminine form of his own name. After 18 hours of labor, I impulsively named her after our kind nurse instead. So, my husband, 38M, and I, 36F, are expecting our first child, a bouncing baby girl, due in a few months. We were both over the moon when we found out the gender, but now things have gotten complicated, to say the least. See, when we first started talking about names, the boy name was immediately decided, Stuart Jr. after my husband. No problem there. It's a classic name and carries family meaning. But for a girl, things got murky. My husband suggested Stuarta. No, you're not having a stroke. Apparently, his logic is that since Stuart ends in T, we can just add an A to make it feminine. I tried explaining why that doesn't quite work, how it sounds more like a furniture brand than a human name, how she'd be endlessly correcting people and explaining its origin. He's adamant though, says it honors him while giving our daughter a unique name. I've suggested alternatives, feminine names that maybe share a similar sound or meaning to Stuart, names he's mentioned liking in the past, even just going back to the drawing board entirely. But he's fixated on Stuarta now. I love my husband dearly, and I understand wanting to honor family, but I can't imagine subjecting our daughter to a lifetime of awkward stares and endless questions about her unusual name. I also worry about potential bullying and the impact it could have on her self-esteem. So, Reddit, am I the jerk for refusing to budge on Stuarta? Is there any compromise I haven't considered? Help us soon-to-be mama out. Looking forward to your thoughts and hopefully some sanity checks. Edit. Please no suggestions for other T names. The man clearly has a theme, and I need to gently steer him away from it, not fuel the fire. Comments. Pony 1993, NTA. Naming a child is a 2 yes and 1 no situation. It means you need 2 times yes for a name to be it. In 1 no to make sure that name is not the name you choose. Works both ways if you'd ask me. Also, I am not a fan of naming the first name of a child after a parent because then the child will always be compared to their parents and need to fight harder to be their own person. I have less problems with the middle name being connected to someone else, parents, grandparents, because that is only a formal name and not used in everyday business. Why is he dead set on Stuarta? I mean, there are so many beautiful names, but he only wants to name his daughter after him. Why not after the mother, like your name, Junior? It is a bit misogynistic to only want to name the baby after the father. Whose last name will the baby get? His as well. Maybe you could find a way, like name the baby with the same first letter as your husband. Stella, Sally, SAA, etc. Make sure the baby has a middle name if she shares the same last name as her father because it will be annoying for simple things like mail and stuff. Shell 37628. To piggyback on this, What's his middle name? Could there be a feminine version of that that's less objectionable? SL actually a name rather than just a weird mishmash of sounds. Lost random dude. I suppose if you go by the meaning of the name Stuart/Stewart, it means guardian of the house, so perhaps Vesta? I suppose Stacy is an option, but I presume OP doesn't want to be Stacy's mom. Deleted girl. It is super simple. He gets to choose the name when he pushes out the baby. Why is it only him being honored and not you? By the way, you need to let your nurses at the hospital know about this. I have read some horror stories here on Reddit where dads or MILs have named the baby and signed the birth certificate. NTA. Curious Catkins 96. The idea of having children as a means of honoring the parent is so incredibly up and bound to lead to a lifetime of dysfunction. But then I'm flat out against ever naming a child for anyone else anyway, except that you're not having a baby, you're giving life to a human and raising them to adulthood. Give them their own identity. For the love of all that's holy, Lama Nur drama. This is why I tell people parenthood scares the out of me. You aren't raising a baby or even a child, you are raising an adult. A whole-ass human that will exist on and interact with this planet for 70+ years. I feel like having a baby is basically making a covenant with society not to raise an unspeakable adult. Definitely don't make it harder by giving them the stupidest name I've ever imagined. Princess Unner. Ferocious NTA. Tell him he only gets one kid named after him, so if he goes with Stuarta now, he'll never get a Stewart Jr. and how come it's so important that he be honored? But not you? See how he feels about naming a future son a male version of your name. Remind him that baby names need a yes from both parents or it's a no. You both need to be able to live with whatever you go with, even if that means both of you missing out on the one you want most. Now for the update. Update 1. The good news. We have a beautiful, healthy baby girl. She weighed in at 7 pounds 4 ounces and already has the most incredible head of dark hair. Seriously, where did that come from? Labor was a marathon, not a sprint. 18 hours of fun. But the amazing nurses kept me fueled up on ice chips and cheesy encouragement. Now for the not-so-good news. The name situation. Buckle up because this might take a minute. Right before pushing started, things got a little heated between me and Stuart. Apparently, the stress of contractions made him even more attached to Stuarta. He was pacing the room, muttering about family legacy while I was doing some very impressive Lamaze breathing exercises. Suddenly, my water broke with a rather impressive pop. Let's just say it startled everyone in the room, including Stuart. The nurse, bless her heart, took advantage of the distraction and very calmly started prepping for delivery. Everything after that was a blur of pushing, encouraging words, and the most amazing head of dark hair emerging into the world. The second our daughter was out, screaming her little lungs out, a wave of pure primal love washed over me. It was in that moment, staring at this tiny, perfect human being, that the name debate completely evaporated. There was no way I could call this beautiful little girl Stuarta. So what did we end up with? In the haze of postpartum bliss, I blurted out the first name that popped into my head. The name of the incredible nurse who coached me through labor, Ella. Yes, Ella. Not exactly the most adventurous choice, but in that moment, it felt perfect. Strong, steady, kind, just like the woman who'd helped bring our daughter into the world. Stuart, bless his confused heart, just looked at me, then at our daughter, then back at me again. Finally, he let out a shaky laugh and said, Ella, it is. Thanks for all the support and hilarious Stuarta comparisons. Here's to sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and the incredible journey of parenthood. Comments. Tank. Words. Don't name your kids a name they have to explain for the rest of their life. It's a selfish indulgence by a parent and the biggest thing you can do to a baby that's done nothing to deserve it. Ella might not be the most adventurous name ever, but it'll never be a negative for your kid. Good show rejecting Stuarta. Sunny Samantha. I knew a guy whose dad's name was Al. He got named Alex. Alex. His sister, Alice. Alice. His mom finally stepped in, and the third kid got a normal name. To be fair, none memorable. And I also knew a happy guy named Buddy Guy. I just want to name a kid something they'll find on a toothbrush or keychain. Smashed potato. Imagine needing your child to be named after you badly. You think anything even remotely resembling Stuarta is a good idea? Acceptable. Encore Boxcore 7500. Damn it, Stuart. If you're so desperate to have something named after you, why don't you go discover a new planet or something? Don't have a whole-ass kid. Acceptable. I truly cannot imagine naming my child after myself. I don't understand that impulse at all. I certainly can't imagine being so hellbent on self-aggrandizement that I do my kid to a name like Stuarta. Now on to the next story. Story 4. I revealed my stepfather's 8-year affair with my mom's cousin to stop her blackmail. Now I'm losing everything I was trying to protect. I 29F am going through a really tough time right now. My stepfather, Mark, 58M, passed away suddenly from a heart attack about 2 months ago. It was a huge shock for everyone, especially my mom, Deborah, 55F. Mark had been in my life since I was 10 years old, when he married my mom, and I always saw him as my real dad. To give you some backstory, my biological father left when I was just a baby. Mom raised me on her own for years, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. When she met Mark, it was like our lives did a complete 180. He was kind, successful, and treated us both like we were the most precious things in the world. I remember being skeptical at first. I'd seen Mom get her heart broken before, and I was protective of her. But Mark won me over with his patience and genuine interest in my life. He never tried to replace my bio dad, but he stepped up in all the ways that mattered. He came to every school event, taught me to drive, and even walked me down the aisle at my wedding. When I graduated college, he surprised me by offering to pay off all my student loans. That's the kind of man I thought he was: generous, loving, and devoted to his family. Mom and Mark seemed to have the perfect marriage. They were always affectionate, rarely argued, and genuinely enjoyed each other's company. They traveled a lot and had loads of shared hobbies. I used to joke that they were more like newlyweds than a couple who'd been together for nearly 2 decades. That's why it was such a shock when we discovered the truth after Mark's death. We were going through his things, trying to sort out his affairs, when we found a burner phone hidden in his desk drawer. Mom almost didn't look through it, but curiosity got the better of her. That's when our world came crashing down. The phone was full of messages and photos exchanged with my mom's cousin, Jenna, 52F. It quickly became clear that they'd been having an affair for the past 8 years. I felt sick to my stomach reading through their exchanges. The pet names, the secret meetups, the plans they'd made for a future together. Jenna has always been the black sheep of the family. She married young to a wealthy older man, Tom, and has spent most of her adult life as a socialite. She and my mom used to be close when they were younger, but they drifted apart over the years. Jenna always seemed to look down on my mom for working a regular job and not being part of the country club set. Before we could even process this betrayal, Jenna showed up at our house. She was crying and demanding to speak to my mom. At first, we thought she was there to offer condolences, but then she launched into a confession about her affair with Mark. She showed my mom even more evidence: emails, hotel receipts, photos from their secret vacations together. Jenna claimed that she and Mark were deeply in love and had been planning to leave their spouses to be together. She said the only reason they hadn't done it yet was because Mark was worried about hurting my mom and me. I don't know if I believe that. It seems more likely they were both too cowardly to face the consequences of their actions. My mom was absolutely shattered. She couldn't stop crying and asking what she'd done wrong, why she wasn't enough for Mark. It broke my heart to see her like that. I was angry at Mark for putting her through this and furious at Jenna for having the audacity to show up and twist the knife. But Jenna wasn't done dropping bombshells. She started insisting that she deserved a portion of Mark's estate. Her reasoning was that since they were in a long-term relationship, she should be entitled to some of his assets and life insurance payout. She even had the nerve to say that Mark would have wanted her to be taken care of. When we refused, Jenna got nasty. She threatened to contest the will and expose the affair publicly if we didn't agree to give her a share. She said she had emails from Mark promising to leave her money, though she conveniently couldn't produce them. My mom was so overwhelmed and distraught that she actually considered giving in to Jenna's demands just to make her go away. But I refused to let that happen. Mark may have cheated, but that didn't mean this woman deserved any of his money. Legally and morally, it belonged to my mom and me. I told Jenna in no uncertain terms that she wouldn't be getting a penny. I reminded her that she was nothing more than Mark's mistress and that she had no legal claim to anything. This set her off. She started screaming at us, calling us greedy and heartless. She said we'd regret crossing her. True to her word, Jenna began a campaign of harassment against us. She bombarded us with calls and messages at all hours. When we blocked her number, she started reaching out to other family members and mutual friends, spinning a sob story about how we were denying her what she was owed. Her adult children even got involved, sending us guilt-tripping messages about how their mom deserved compensation for all the years she devoted to Mark. It was surreal to be painted as the bad guys in this situation when we were the ones who'd been betrayed. The constant pressure and drama were taking a huge toll on my mom. She could barely eat or sleep, and she'd cry at the drop of a hat. I hated seeing her like this and knew I had to do something to make it stop. That's when I decided to fight fire with fire. If Jenna wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too. I started doing some digging, reaching out to old family friends and acquaintances who might have dirt on Jenna. What I discovered was even worse than I'd imagined. Not only had Jenna been cheating on her husband, Tom, with Mark, but she was currently involved with another married man as well. This guy, let's call him Dave, was a fellow country club member whose wife was battling cancer. I gathered all the evidence I could find of both affairs. Text messages, photos, hotel receipts, everything. Then I posted it all on social media for everyone to see, including Jenna's husband and kids. I made sure to tag relevant family members so it would spread quickly. In the post, I laid out the whole sordid story. I exposed Mark and Jenna's affair too, figuring there was no point in protecting Mark's reputation anymore. I detailed how Jenna had shown up after the funeral to demand money and how she'd been harassing us ever since. The response was immediate and explosive. Jenna's carefully curated society wife image crumbled overnight. Her husband left her. Her kids refused to speak to her. And she's become a pariah in the country club circles she once ruled. She's still threatening legal action, but our lawyer says she doesn't have a leg to stand on. He's confident that even if she tries to contest the will, she won't get anywhere. I thought I'd feel victorious after taking Jenna down, but instead, I just feel drained. The whole situation is such a mess, and it feels like it's tainted all my memories of Mark. I'm struggling to reconcile the loving stepfather I knew with the man who could betray us like this. The biggest problem now is that my mom is really upset with me for what I did. She says I went too far and that I've damaged Mark's legacy. A lot of our family members agree and are calling me spiteful and vindictive. But I don't think I did anything wrong. Jenna and Mark made their choices and now they, or Mark's memory at least, have to face the consequences. I was just protecting what's rightfully ours. My mom is the wronged party here, not Jenna. Why should we give up half of our inheritance to the woman who helped destroy our family? I know my mom is still grieving and processing everything, so I'm trying to be patient. But it hurts that she seems more concerned with preserving Mark's reputation than standing up for herself. I was only looking out for her best interests. Am I really the hero? Should I have just kept quiet and given Jenna what she wanted? I don't think I could have lived with myself if I did that. But now I'm starting to question if I went too far. I'd appreciate any outside perspectives on this messy situation. Update 1. It's been about 3 weeks since my last post, and unfortunately, things have only gotten more complicated and painful. The fallout from my actions continues to ripple through my family, and I'm starting to wonder if the cost was too high. My mom is still barely speaking to me. She's moved out of our house, the home she shared with Mark for nearly 2 decades, and is staying with her sister, my Aunt Karen. Every time I try to reach out, she either ignores me or responds with short, cold messages. It's killing me to be cut off from her like this when we've always been so close. To give you some context, my mom and I have always had a special bond. When it was just the two of us against the world, we became not just mother and daughter but best friends. We've always been able to talk about anything. She was the first person I called with any news, good or bad. The fact that she's shutting me out now is devastating. I finally managed to have a real conversation with her last week, but it didn't go well. She told me that she's ashamed of my behavior and thinks I acted out of selfishness and spite rather than concern for her. According to her, I've made this whole situation 100 times worse and more painful than it needed to be. I tried to explain again that I was just trying to protect us from Jenna's manipulations and extortion attempts. I reminded her of how Jenna had threatened us and tried to bully her way into Mark's inheritance. But my mom wasn't having it. She said that by exposing everything publicly, I've ensured that she'll never be able to move past this or remember Mark without pain and anger. She feels like I've tainted all of her happy memories. What hurt the most was when she said she doesn't recognize the person I've become and that she raised me to be better than this. She actually told me that right now, she doesn't even want me in her life. That felt like a knife to the heart. I know grief can make people lash out, but I never expected my own mother to turn on me like this. It makes me question if I really did do the wrong thing, even though I still believe I was justified. To make matters more complicated, Mark's family is now getting involved. His brother, Jack, reached out to tell me that they're planning to contest the will. Apparently, they don't think I deserve to inherit anything after dragging Mark's name through the mud. They say that since I'm not his biological child, I have no right to his money. If I'm not going to protect his legacy, this has brought up a lot of painful memories and insecurities for me. When Mark first came into our lives, his family wasn't thrilled about him marrying a woman with a kid. They were always polite to me, but I could sense their reservations. Over the years, I thought we'd moved past that and that they'd accepted me as part of the family. Now it feels like they're using the situation as an excuse to push me out. I'm hurt and angry that they would try to cut me out like this. Mark raised me since I was 10. He was my dad in every way that mattered. We were extremely close, and I know he would have wanted me to inherit. It feels like a betrayal of his memory for them to try and take that away from me now. Our lawyer says they don't have much of a case, but it's still causing me a lot of stress. Between this and the ongoing drama with Jenna, I feel like I'm fighting battles on all sides, and the one person I want to lean on most, my mom, isn't there for me. I'm starting to wonder if any of this was worth it. Yes, we've kept Jenna from getting her hands on the inheritance, but at what cost? I've potentially destroyed my relationship with my mom. Extended family members I was once close to now want nothing to do with me, and I'm facing a costly legal battle that's draining the very inheritance I was trying to protect. There are moments where I considered just giving in and splitting the money with Jenna and Mark's family just to make all of this go away. But then I remember how manipulative and cruel Jenna was, how she was ready to blackmail us, and my resolve strengthens. I know that giving in would be letting Mark and my mom down. The stress is really starting to get to me. I'm having trouble sleeping and concentrating at work. I lost weight because I can barely eat. My husband is worried about me and keeps suggesting I talk to someone, but I don't know how to even begin explaining this mess to a stranger. I just wish I knew how to fix things with my mom. I miss her so much and hate that she sees me as the villain in all this. I've tried apologizing, but she doesn't want to hear it. I've sent flowers, letters, even tried to visit, but she won't see me. Part of me wants to respect her wishes and give her space, but another part is terrified that if I do that, I'll lose her forever. I keep replaying our last conversation in my head, wondering if there was something I could have said differently to make her understand. I'm at a loss for what to do next. This whole situation has become such a tangled mess, and I don't know how to start unraveling it. I have never imagined that trying to protect my mom would end up costing me my relationship with her. I don't know how to move forward from here. Update 2. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and I'm sorry to say that things have only gotten worse. The legal battles are in full swing now, with both Jenna and Mark's family aggressively contesting the will. Our lawyer is doing his best, but it's a long and expensive process that's draining me both financially and emotionally. What's even more devastating is that my relationship with my mom seems to be permanently damaged. She's still living with my aunt and has made it clear she has no interest in reconciling anytime soon. The last time we spoke, she told me that she's decided to support Mark's family in contesting the will. She says that since I've betrayed Mark's memory, I don't deserve his inheritance. I was shocked and hurt beyond words. It feels like my own mother has completely abandoned me. I tried to remind her of all the years Mark and I spent together, how he always treated me as his own daughter, but she just accused me of using him for his money and said that a real daughter would have protected his reputation no matter what. This has caused a huge rift in our extended family. Some relatives are siding with my mom and Mark's family, while others support me. Family gatherings have become tense affairs, full of awkward silences and pointed comments. I've stopped attending most of them because I can't stand the hostile atmosphere. My cousin Amy, who's always been like a sister to me, tried to play peacemaker at a recent family dinner. She suggested that maybe if I apologized publicly and retracted my social media posts, everyone could start to move past this. But I don't see how I can do that without letting Jenna off the hook and opening us up to her demands again. Jenna is still on the warpath, determined to get what she feels she's owed. She's been spreading vicious rumors about me in the community, painting me as a greedy, heartless person who is disrespecting her true love, Mark. Some people are actually buying into it, and I've lost friends over this. Last week, I ran into Jenna at the grocery store. She made a big show of crying and saying how much she missed Mark, loudly enough for everyone around us to hear. When I tried to hurry away, she followed me, asking how I could be so cruel to my poor grieving mother by putting her through this legal battle. It took everything in me not to scream at her right there in the produce aisle. The stress of everything is really taking a toll on me. I'm having trouble sleeping and concentrating at work. Some days, I can barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. I keep second-guessing every decision I've made, wondering if there was a way I could have handled this that wouldn't have cost me so much. My husband has been my rock through all of this, but I can tell it's wearing on him too. He's been picking up my slack at home and trying to shield me from the worst of the gossip. I feel guilty for putting him in this position, especially since this isn't even his family drama. But then I remember how Jenna tried to manipulate and blackmail us, how she was ready to tear our family apart for money. I think of how Mark betrayed my mom's trust for years, and I find my resolve again. I know I did the right thing in exposing the truth, even if everyone else disagrees. I'm trying to stay strong and focus on the future. I've started looking into grief counseling groups, hoping to find people who might understand what I'm going through. I'm also throwing myself into work as a distraction. It's not much, but it's helping me get through each day. I still hold out hope that someday my mom will come around and see that I was just trying to protect us. But I'm also preparing myself for the possibility that our relationship may never recover. It's a painful reality to face, but I'm doing my best to accept it. For now, I'm just taking it one day at a time and trying to stay true to myself, even when it feels like the whole world is against me. Update 3. It's been 6 months since this nightmare began, and I finally reached a turning point. After months of legal battles, stress, and heartache, I've made the difficult decision to walk away from it all. I met with our lawyer last week, and he laid out the reality of the situation. While we might eventually win the case, it could take years and drain most of the inheritance in legal fees. And even if we won, the personal cost would be immeasurable. So I've decided to offer a settlement. I'm giving up my claim to the inheritance, splitting it between my mom, Mark's family, and yes, even Jenna. It's not what I wanted, but I realize now that no amount of money is worth the pain and damage this fight has caused. The decision wasn't easy. I spent nights agonizing over it, feeling like I was letting Mark down by giving in. But then I found an old photo album from my high school graduation. There was a picture of Mark beaming proudly next to me in my cap and gown. I remembered how he always said that family was more important than anything else. I think he'd understand why I'm doing this. I called my mom to tell her about the decision. It was the first time we'd spoken in months. The conversation was awkward and stilted, but at least she didn't hang up on me. She agreed to the settlement terms but made it clear that this doesn't fix everything between us. She said she needs more time. Telling Jenna was harder. I arranged to meet her in a public place, worried about how she might react to my surprise. She was subdued. The fight seems to have gone out of her too. She accepted the terms without argument and even thanked me for being generous. The word tasted bitter in my mouth, but I let it go. Mark's family was the last to agree, but they eventually came around. I think they're just relieved to put this all behind them. My relationship with them will never be the same, but at least the hostility has cooled. The legal proceedings to finalize everything are underway. It's strange to think that soon this will all be over. I'm not sure how to feel about it. There's relief, certainly, but also a lingering sadness for everything that's been lost. I'm planning to move to a new city once everything's settled. I need a fresh start, away from all the painful reminders and gossip. My husband's company has an office in Seattle, and they've agreed to transfer him. It's scary to think about starting over, but also oddly freeing. My cousin Amy is the only one who seems to understand why I'm leaving. She helped me pack up my childhood bedroom at Mom's house last weekend. We found my old diaries, full of entries about how excited I was when Mark came into our lives. Amy hugged me as I cried over those innocent words from my younger self. I've learned some hard lessons through all of this, about family loyalty and the complexities of human relationships. I still believe I was right to expose the truth, but I regret the way I went about it. In trying to protect what I thought was important, I lost sight of what really matters. I don't know what the future holds. My relationship with my mom is still fragile, and I don't know if we'll ever fully recover what we had. But I'm hopeful that with time and distance, we might be able to build something new. For now, I'm focused on healing and moving forward. I'm looking into volunteer opportunities in Seattle, thinking maybe I can channel all this pain into helping others. My husband and I are talking about starting a family of our own someday. Life goes on even after everything changes. To those who have followed my story and offered support, thank you. Your words have been a lifeline during this difficult time. I may not be around much once I move, but I'll always be grateful for the kindness of strangers during the darkest period of my life. Now on to the next story. Story 5. A stuck-up, entitled Mom Gets Thrown in Jail. You're not going to want to miss this one. So, I used to live in Zoland, and upon returning to fair Blighty, the UK, I began looking for work. Being a simple man of simple needs, I quickly found employment in the marketing department for a medium-sized industrial manufacturer. It was a little below my experience level and qualifications, but I take what I can get because I'm a simple man. At the final interview, I mentioned it would be top banana if I could arrive 5 minutes early and leave 5 minutes early on most days so I could catch my train with a smile. My new boss, hereafter referred to as El Monterosa, which means liar by the way, said, of course, it's only 5 minutes, and you'd still be working the full 8 hours. Same problem as Opie. And welcome aboard. My first day comes, and I ride the choo-choo all the way to my new workplace, eager to begin. I quickly learned that the lunchroom is pure stank. Senior staff put their name instead of mine on any trade article I get published, and that our job mostly consists of extorting money from our own sales staff. But that's life. I am a simple man, and so I set about my labors, glad to earn a crust. What really flogged my noggin, however, is Lamont Rosa calling me into her office on the second day and telling me I can't leave early again because it is unprofessional. I remind her of the conversation we had in which she said with her mouth the words, "It will be no problem for you to arrive and leave 5 minutes early." She smirks and replies, "Maybe I said that, but is it written in your contract? You big old mean to Rosa to say." I shrug and get on with life because that's life. But, of course, I start looking for other work. By making me stay the 5 minutes, Lament to Roa makes me miss my train and turns my 2-hour daily commute into a 4-hour one. Yet, up here I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'm going to say that I do not want this. I am a simple man and need my downtime. About 2 weeks later, the company goes on a firing spree. One of those people fired is me because I have been quite openly looking for other work. I am given 2 weeks' notice and smugly told I am not good enough for this place and that I will never work in the area again because of Lament to Rosa's contacts as she Snapchats the news to the rest of the team. I joke not. I reflect that she is probably right, as I am a simple man among the other victims of the purge. As the regional sales manager for Germany, this is more important to the company than my meaningless departure. Since the company also decided to end the contract with their biggest German distributor, and so suddenly a huge part of the company's core market is not active, and they have no salesman to find them a new distributor. Management panics until laments Rosa remembers that her despised marketing bandit is a fluent German speaker. And so the fun begins. She asks me to step up to the plate, be a buddy old pal. I didn't mean it when I said you'd never work in this town again. I am a simple man, so rather than point out that I am not being paid anywhere near what I could earn as a translator, rather than remind them that they have just fired me and I am not their friend anymore, rather than asking, is it written in my contract? And then smirking like an obnoxious dingle on a high horse made of douche, I instead swallow my pride and agree to help out. It is here that the twin revengers named inadequacy and abandonment make their entrance. Firstly, inadequacy. During every conversation, I mention my job title, advertising assistant, when the friendly titans politely ask why a lowly assistant is negotiating this kind of deal. I simply explained that the regional manager was let go and there is no formal replacement. This is entirely true, but it is also a huge red flag for any serious company, especially well-established German manufacturing firms. And combined with the temper uncertainty regarding Brexit, which had been announced only a few days prior, was enough to kill any interest they had in becoming our next distributor. Secondly, abandonment. As I am a simple man, I forgot to tell Lemon to Roa that I had already received and accepted another job offer. She was thrilled at the praises she was getting from management for finding a stopgap solution to the catastrophic damage they had done to themselves, and she asked me if I could actually stay on with the company until they secured a new distributor since I obviously had nothing better to do with my time, being fired and all. I assured her there were no hard feelings over my firing and that I would stay to help as long as I could. On the day I was originally due to leave, I held my calls, drew up a summary of where we stood. It was effectively a sad emoji followed by a poop emoji, handed it to the mentor Rosa, and explained I was leaving to enjoy a week of holiday, followed by starting a new job in a different field. She sputtered. She couldn't believe it. She thought I would stay longer to help clean up the mess. They still had no distributor and no sales manager for Germany. They were hemorrhaging money. She called me out, reminding me I said I would stay. But I am a simple man, and so my only reply was, maybe I said that, but is that written in my contract? Here's where I would normally describe how I feel about the story, but since I am also a simple man, I will instead use emojis. I will read in a crying while laughing to represent myself and a skull emoji to represent the career of love to Rosa. If you are also a simple fan, let me know down in the comments how you feel about this story using only emojis. Flashback to 2014 or so. I moved out on my own in 2013 and moved into an old house converted into a 2-floor apartment directly across from my future in-laws. The downstairs neighbors were loud, blaring music at all hours. Yes, all of the hours. Wouldn't cut the grass or take out the trash on our shared schedule. Crummy neighbors, but they never bothered me directly. The guy was pretty chill when sober and would turn the music down a little when I texted him. He was okay until his girlfriend moved in. Now add shouting matches to the mix, and all of a sudden my request to turn down the music makes him turn it up. I can barely walk on my super thin floor without her banging on the ceiling with a broom. I was okay since I am a heavy sleeper, could sleep through anything. My wife moved in, and I quickly found out that she is quite the opposite. Bang on, turned at a certain angle in the door of the bathroom door, closed halfway, blackout curtains with them taped to the wall so zero light comes through. Zero sounds other than the fan. You get the idea. I told her, we can't expect them to remain silent when she's ready for bed. We need to be reasonable. But the wall-rattling music needs to stop during the night. She hated it during the day, but I told her there's nothing we can do then. So she would go to her parents' house a lot during the day. I talked to neighbor guy. He said, yeah, man, that's cool. But it turns out the girlfriend wasn't having it. And his attitude then changed to, yeah, well, it's our house, so you can go F yourself if you think you can tell us what to do, and you can move out if you don't like it. Something definitely had to change once she got pregnant and the baby came, so I did the only thing I could do. I fought fire with fire and maliciously complied with the law to the T. I could only report them for noise after 11 p.m. I never forget the morning hour when the noise could start, but I believe it was 9 a.m. My dad had these huge old concert speakers in his garage, professional grade, black leather bound, 5 foot tall and 3 feet wide, and a pretty nice vintage stereo amp he has too. But my apartment was so small I sadly only had room for one. We replaced our coffee table with this thing, laid face down onto our thin office carpet. Tired of his crummy tunes, I tested the Geneva Convention breaking device when they weren't home. Holy cow, I had to take everything down from the tables, counters, and shelves because they would shake off. I prepared audio files to feed the stereo. I was giddy like a kid with a new Christmas toy. I turned it on when I left for work and got my wife up to send her to her parents. I came home from work and hung out with her parents until I was close to bedtime. They resisted for 3 days. On day 2, I found a pile of manure on my doorstep, but it didn't faze me. I cycled between sine and square waves and clashing chords. I'm gonna pause the story here. I wanted to know what kind of audio torture this guy was inflicting, so I looked up those audio waves, and I'm gonna play them here. Don't worry, I turned the volume way down so it won't blow out your eardrums, but this is what it sounds like. Here is the sine wave. Here is the square wave. And here is the sawtooth wave. And now back to the story. Marching music, Washington Post march on loop, preaching clips. They weren't just atheist but outspoken anti-Christian, so it was a must. The most stupid songs you could think of. Captain Planet theme song, chicken dance, etc. This poor old house rattled in ways I didn't think possible. The vibrations from the sine wave would make your vision blur. I eventually got a text from him that read, "Sorry man, you can stop now." I did not. He needed a few more days to let it sink in. Plus I had so much fun putting it together. They complained to the police and the landlord. There was nothing they could do since I wasn't doing anything wrong. I didn't even hear music during the time of peace to follow. It was so quiet they would build up their courage and try again every few weeks when I wasn't home. But my wife was. I then showed her how to tame the beast so she could let it loose while I was away. I had to give them a spanking every now and then, but they learned. They were so happy when we moved out. Since I'm a simple man, I would rate this story. Music emoji, injured emoji, devil emoji. So, a little backstory. I have a very good relationship with my mom, so I FaceTime and text with her regularly, though I have never called her because there's no point to do this. My mom and manager are also very good friends and knows when I'm there. I'm always showing my location with her as she worries about me. And the cast for this story is entitled Mom, entitled Boy, Sweet Girl, my mom, me, and Bolt, a cute doggo. So let's begin. This happened a few hours after my shift ends, and I'm still sitting in my normal spot in the McDonald's. I take her vest off so she can play with some kids that were in there earlier and just let her sleep as she looks tired. When she returned to me, I was just sitting there, barely anyone else in the store, drawing on the tablet part of my laptop, making a drawing in my sketchbook more solid until entitled Mom, entitled Brat, and Sweet Girl walk into the store. I overhear the Sweet Girl, looks around 6 or 7, and entitled Brat, looks to be a teenager, arguing about something. It sounds like he is making fun of the girl's dress, which I thought was unfair. Her dress was really cute, but entitled Mom sides with the boy and agrees the dress is gross and says, "I don't know why your father bought you that hideous dress." The girl is visibly hurt by this and walks away from them. This is when she walks over to me. She sees Bolt in my drawing on my tablet. She walks up next to me and looks at my drawing. "That's a cool robot, and your dog is cute. What's his name?" I look at her and got a sign to her as it is a habit, not thinking she will probably not know sign language. She doesn't and gives me a weird look. Thinking fast, I turn my sketchbook to a blank page near the back and write, "I'm sorry, sweetie. Cannot speak. I use a thing called sign language to talk. Thank you. I like it too. Her name is Bolt. You can pet her if you like." After a few seconds of her reading what I said, she looks at me. "That's so cool. She's cute too." She then goes and pets Bolt, who does not move as she is sound asleep. I just smile and get back to what I was doing for a few seconds before snatch my sketchbook is grabbed and taken off the table by entitled Brat. "Your drawings suck. Why do you even do it anymore?" I look at him, shocked and confused by why he grabbed my sketchbook, not even registering the fact he insulted my drawings. I take back my book, ripping the drawing I was just working on. Her drawings are not stupid. They're cool. No, they're not. Anyone can draw better than her. Now realizing he was insulting my work, I get the Matisse I get during this whole encounter, standing up, which in itself is very intimidating, but I am wearing a tight red tank top this day, and it shows my muscles very clearly. I have a six-pack and a little on the bust side, which is not intimidating if you're an adult, but if you're around my size, it is. This kid was taller, yes, but not enough to easily overpower me. He sees this and, like a lot of kids, runs off and I sit back down, smiling. A sweet girl who smiles back, probably never seeing anyone stand up to her brother. But no, we are nowhere near done with this. Moments later, he is back with entitled mom. What the heck did you do to my son? Sweet girl stopped petting that dirty mutt. But mom, she was cut off. I asked you a question, Brett. Answer me. Mom, she's cut off again. You're scared now, kid, that I have an adult with me. Answer me. Mom, she threatened to beat me if I didn't give her money. She's probably homeless. All of this, I never get a chance to think or even try to sign with her. But finally, sweet girl gets a word in. Mom, she can't talk. She's mute. I look at her, thankful, but this does nothing to calm her down. Don't you dare raise your voice at me. That's complete nonsense. Of course, you can speak. She's just a homeless, which she probably just said that to get you on her side. At this point, I'm actually freaking out as I don't know what to do. I don't want to reach for my book or tablet as I'm afraid she will attack me. I really don't think signing to her would work and probably only make her mad. All the while, sweet girl looks at me with embarrassment and shame. Gosh darn it, say something. Stop it with this new BS. At this point, she must have noticed my phone laying on the table, grabbing it. I get scared as I think she is stealing it, but she says, let's see what your parents think about you threatening kids and walking around like a prostitute. I was wearing a red tank top that showed very light cleavage, less than she was showing. Black jeans, they had neon paint all over them, and one of those hoodie jean jackets. She opens my phone. I don't have a password on it because it's a very old iPhone 4, as I don't really need a phone for much. I don't really use it much except to listen to music. She goes to my contacts and calls my mom. She answers in seconds as the only time she gets a call from my phone. It's an emergency. She had to put it on speaker to embarrass me. At this exact moment, entitled Brad asks, Mom, can I take her laptop? Who is this? Is something wrong with my kid? Entitled Mom seems a little shocked that she immediately knows it's not me but starts with a very smug tone. Yes, miss, I have her right here, and she's being extremely rude to me and my children. She is cut off by my mom. I extremely doubt that. She is mute and has never been rude in her life. Now please return her property, or I will call the cops. Looking more enraged now, how dare you? Your teenage daughter is walking around like a prostitute with some stray. She even stole my son's laptop. Miss, I do not like you talking about my daughter and her service dog like that. I know for a fact my daughter does not have a violent bone in her body and would never steal anything. Give her back her laptop, her phone, and whatever else you stole. I will personally make sure you are arrested for theft along with harassing a disabled person. Also, make it my goal in life to make sure you get as much time as possible for it. My mom is the county's district attorney. Now stop harassing my daughter and return her property before I get angry. Entitled Mom is stunned at this and goes to respond, probably to not look bad in front of her kids. How dare you speak to me this way? My husband will have you and your daughter in jail. My mom cuts her off again. My mom does not take any flack. Ma'am, I am the district attorney of the county we are in. I know any cop that you would know. It is my job to make sure criminals like you get the book thrown at them. Now I will ask you one last time before I personally come down there and make sure you are arrested and make sure your kids are taken by Child Protective Services. Give my daughter's property back. She says all of this in the very cold, very serious, and very scary tone me and my sister know from our childhoods, which also probably gives murderers nightmares. In total, Mom just stands there, frozen. I thought it was over. I was wrong. Entitled Mom seems to get some courage back. Fine, if you want to be like that and defend your trust. My mom hangs up. Within a minute, there are 4 police cars there. My manager is with me in my booth with all my stuff safely back in my bag. Bolt leaps to the table so she doesn't run off to play with her police friends, and the mom is being loaded in the back of one of the cop cars, cussing like a sailor. The kids are waiting with the police officers for their dad to come to get them. I'm giving a statement to one of the officers that knows how to sign. Also, Sweet Girl has one of my older drawings of a unicorn and flowers. Also, Sweet Girl said my outfit was cool. My mom was there about 20 minutes later and drives me home after she deals with the police and the kid's father, who was a police officer. He apologizes a lot for his wife. They apparently were going through a really messy divorce and fighting for custody of the kids. Apparently, she's abusive towards sweet girl. My mom later told me the whole time during the trial of the mom, she was trying to get her fired and accused her of making stories up about her. But it came out that the house she was staying at with her boyfriend, where her kids say while they were with her, was cooking meth in the basement. She was charged with child endangerment, drug trafficking, theft, attempted that, and child abuse. I don't know how long she got. Alright, so this is a story of one overprotective mom versus another overprotective mom. The difference is one is just an entitled parent, the other is a freaking district attorney. And for the younger audience out there who doesn't know what a district attorney is, the district attorney is the lawyer that the cops work with to make sure that bad guys get put in jail. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I was assaulted by my sister's husband. Was I really in the wrong for not telling her I, 33F, was sexually assaulted by my alcoholic brother-in-law when I was 24? It happened less than 6 months since I'd moved 1.5 hours away out of my parents' house. Took me 8 years to tell my husband, who I had been dating for 4 months when it happened. Once I told him, it started explaining a lot of weird behaviors. Panic attacks when going to visit my family and night terrors being the two biggest. About a year ago, I told my parents everything that happened. My father was fairly silent. My mother tried to be understanding but couldn't help herself on comments like, "Why didn't you tell us?" and making jokes about how up my childhood was. When I said I had been in therapy at the time, I explained to my parents the difficulty I was having. I told them I need their support to tell me if he's going to be around when I'm visiting. I explained to them how it has impacted me from being around as often as I would like. My dad was quiet, and my mom carried on about how that shouldn't slow me down from visiting my family. Over the course of the last year, neither of my parents have even broached this topic since the day I told them. If Bill is around at a family gathering, my dad pays attention and is right by my side if he tries to talk to me. My mom gives him alcohol when he shows up already drunk and does things like set an extra place setting at family dinners just in case he shows up. It has been hurtful, and I haven't exactly felt supported by my family. My relationship with my sister has also deteriorated, although we were never super close to begin with. She is still blissfully unaware. A few years ago, my mother announced to the family that she was officially giving me Thanksgiving to host. Since then, it has been a battle and she tries to host every year. I finally put my foot down this year and said I won't come. I tried to explain to her how hurt I am and that I want to be in my own safe place if Bill actually shows up. He usually gets sick when it involves coming to my house. I think I'll feel empowered to finally confront him. I got emotional trying to say this, and my mother told me not to cry. I lost it and told her I was allowed to have emotions and she was going to listen to them even if they made her uncomfortable. She was not happy with what I had to say to her and started swinging back with unrelated issues. I hung up on her because the conversation was going nowhere good fast. After I got into the fight with my mom, I felt empowered to confront Bill. We talked. He tried to say he slightly remembered what he did to me but wasn't sure because he was blackout drunk. I gave him every single detail. I also told him I'm not looking to blow up my sister's life almost a decade later. But he needs to step up and be a better husband and father and also stop drinking. The next day, my mom told my sister about our fight. The main point of the fight was me not feeling supported around the who sexually assaulted me. My sister doesn't know this part, so she thinks I'm arguing about hosting Thanksgiving just because I'm difficult. I got a long, nasty text from my sister for being rude to my mother. She carried on and called me a bad aunt for not being around my nephews enough and not spending more time with my family. I'm hurt. I screenshotted the text and sent it to Bill so he has to at least see what I'm going through because of him. So I've been attempting to protect my sister by not telling her this secret. Should I just spill the beans and let the cards fall where they may? TLDR, Bill sexually assaulted me almost 10 years ago. Everyone except my sister knows. She's mad at me for not being around enough, but it's because of the trauma I'm still working through. Do I keep taking it to keep the peace or spill the beans? Update 1. Saying I'm attempting to protect my sister was the wrong word choice. I think I've been trying to protect myself from her volatility. My thinking is definitely jumbled, but thanks for helping me work through straightening it out. Comment: why have you never told your sister? Who are you protecting in this scenario? OP. The reason I have not told my sister is because I believe this will be a shoot the messenger situation. It is also the reason I never told her at the time. I believe my mother and sister will gang up against me. I hear what you're saying and totally understand it. I also have a lot of resentment towards my sister. He was doing heroin when they were dating and couldn't hold down a job because of stealing. When I think about it, I'm very angry at her. I think I feel guilty over the shot and fear of potentially ruining their marriage. She may be trauma bonded. I agree, she's probably trauma bonded. When I started dealing with all of this and pulled away from my family very noticeably, according to my mom, my sister thought I might be having marital issues and brought it up to my mother. My mother told me flat out that her response to my sister was that it's my life/marriage and they shouldn't get involved. So this all started with me having a breakdown, and nobody in my family asking because it wasn't any of their business. I believe they are projecting. OP defends herself against someone who says she's sending mixed messages by being fine with Bill in person and leaving still with a monster. I have not been fine interacting with him. I was having panic attacks since the beginning but didn't understand the reason because I thought I had repressed it successfully. It took a lot of therapy to figure out what I was upset about and what was causing the panic attacks and night terrors. I'm not fine leaving my sister and the kids in a situation like that. My sister has spent her entire life running face first into bad partners. Physical, emotional, drug abusers. She doubles down when anybody expresses any concern or tries to help her, usually making the problem substantially worse. I never want to see him again. The only time I have contacted him outside of family interaction since this happened was to confront him on Saturday and sent a screenshot of my sister's nasty text. There have been no other texts, so 2 texts in the last 9 years. Nobody has accused me of being aggressive. The problem is that I haven't been able to stand up for myself. Not that I'm causing a scene. I agree they're trying to go to status quo at all costs, and their gripe is the fact that I've been distancing myself. If you want to call it trauma dumping, I did that back in January when I told my parents about the assault. This most recent argument was me telling my mother that her strong-arming a holiday away from me so my assaulter can be present hurts my feelings and does not make me feel like I have her support. I proposed very clear instructions back in January, and those requests have been denied. This was me reiterating those requests and calling out that they aren't being considered. Funny you say I should run to a therapist. I fired my last one for telling me I shouldn't address this situation at all right now. I'm doing the best I can with the tools I have. I'm surprised your husband didn't handle him SL. When did you tell him? My husband hasn't handled him at my request. There were several insistent offers. I only told my husband 2 months before telling my parents. He was the one who helped me work through things and be able to start verbalizing what happened to me. We had several serious discussions in which he promised to support me in the ways I asked, which included not adding to the conflict. Trust me, husband is just waiting for an excuse to jump. He is upset that I won't allow him to handle it how he wants. OP explains in detail what happened. TWW for assault description. Not necessary to read. I appreciate the nuance. When this happened, it was the middle of the night, and I was sound asleep. I woke up to his fingers inside of me. My gut reaction was to slap him away and curl up in a tight little ball. At some point, I fell back asleep, then woke up to his fingers inside of me a second time. I foresee my sister accusing me of lying to hurt her in some way, then going and see. I've tried broaching much less scandalous topics with her as gently as possible, and she has lost her ever-loving mind on me. She has terrible unaddressed anxiety and is very emotionally volatile. It's pretty clear I need to tear the Band-Aid off. I'm going to try calling my dad soon, and hopefully he'll be of some help. Update 2. I've reached out to my dad and asked to talk to him without my mother around. I'm going to tell him that I'm going to tell my sister. I'm going to ask him to go to her house before I do this and take my nephews so they don't get exposed to the aftermath of the conversation. Further explanation of Update 2 in comments. Thank you for saying all of this. I finally spoke to my dad. I told him I'm going to tell my sister and would appreciate his help making sure my nephews aren't around when that phone call happens. I told him the ways my mother has hurt me recently by forcing interactions and telling half-truths. His rebuttal was that it was hurtful when I hung up on my mom over the weekend. He first tried to talk me out of saying something to my sister by accusing me of being vindictive. I had to say and repeat that what Bill did to me is rape and that I need to share the burden I've been carrying for the last decade. That was met with silence. He then couldn't help until next week and finally said he might be able to make things happen tonight as my sister is currently at my parents' house. I'm waiting on a text from him for the go-ahead to call my sister. There was definitely some gaslighting during the conversation, but he's offered to help, and it's the most support I've managed minus my hubs, so I'll take what I can get. The anger monologue you wrote is amazing, except a few stylistic word choices. That's basically my inner monologue when I think about how I truly feel. I've been reading and rereading that to keep my emotions appropriately angry. I agree with you about not having my dad do it. This is mine, and I'm not going to heal unless I do it myself. Update 3. Dad pulled through and gave me an opportunity to talk to my sister. She handled it way better than I expected. She acknowledged I was a victim and kept apologizing. Fleshed out final update in comments. Final update. Absolutely no reason to apologize for your language. I talked to my sister. I asked her not to interrupt me, even if she wanted to. She respected it. She quietly listened as I told her what happened and began sobbing. The first words out of her mouth were that I will never have to see him again. He will never be welcome at mine or my parents' houses for her. She believed me 100%. She asked questions, including if he was drunk when it happened. She acknowledged the answer didn't really matter and it was still inexcusable. This happened when we were all on a trip together visiting my grandparents. She didn't even remember going on the trip, so I walked her back to that weekend and we talked through the details. She also shared that Bill was raped by an alcoholic aunt when he was younger. I told her I called and confronted him Saturday. She asked about our conversation and I told her everything. She asked me if he admitted to remembering it and said she doesn't allow him to drink in the house anymore because he blacks out and doesn't remember what he does. I told her if ever there was a reason to be 100% sober, I thought this was a pretty damn good one. She got angry, but not at me. She went on repeat a few times that she's my big sister and her job is to protect me. I could feel her internalizing a lot of pain. Bill wound up in the hospital yesterday due to a staph infection. So she told me she wants to go home and beat the crap out of him, but can't do it in the hospital, so we'll wait for him to get discharged. I explained that I do love my family, but the panic attacks and night terrors keep me away so I can protect myself. She told me she's been very angry at me for years for not being around, and knowing this changes things. She said had she known, I never would have had to be around him all these years. She kept telling me she wished I had told her sooner. I told her how I always thought I'd defend myself in that type of situation, but for some reason froze. I watched some videos on betrayal last night, and boy does that explain some stuff. She acknowledged that everyone handles trauma differently and it isn't my fault. We then both acknowledged that we were raised to repress any emotions that weren't positive, and I had ultimately handled the situation how I had been raised, alone and internalized. She then said I was a victim, am not responsible for how I handled this trauma when it happened, and none of this was my fault. I felt hurt. She told me that she wished I had told her at the time. They didn't have any kids when this happened. She said she most likely would have divorced him. She doesn't see divorce as an option now because of the kids. I explained that I didn't have the tools in my toolbox at the time, and that's what I've been working on. I told her until a year ago, I couldn't stand in an empty room and say what happened to me out loud or even write it on a piece of paper. She just sobbed. I told her I am very angry at my mother for telling half-truths and being so hurtful to me. She tried to make excuses for my mom, telling her about the argument over the weekend. I told her how hurt I was at the most recent family gathering. My sister confirmed a week ahead of time that Bill was working and wouldn't be there. We walked into my parents' house, and he was there drunk. I watched my mother give him at least 3 beers and laugh and joke with him. Neither of my parents gave me a heads up he was there. My sister understood and apologized when I brought this same topic up to my mom. She told me she didn't think it mattered or was that big of a deal. I'm really happy Bill is in the hospital. It means my sister has time to straighten out her own thoughts and make some plans. She is also on a shortened WFH schedule this week. It all seems serendipitous. She was at my parents' house. I hope they are helpful and kind to her. I hope she does a lot of thinking and makes decisions that are best for her and my nephews. If talking to her made me realize anything for sure, it's that my parents are pretty messed up. I'm gonna text my sister this morning. Considering the way she handled it, I think reaching out and trying to heal our relationship will be a good move. I also don't want my parents to do what they did to me to her when the dust settles, so I'm gonna talk to my sister about all the unhealthy BS from my parents. I think if we can stand up to their messed up behaviors together, everyone will be better off. I might reach out to my dad today. I'm undecided. I will definitely not be reaching out to my mother. I am going to go extremely low contact with her for the next few months at least. I will adjust however I need to, including NC if needed. Both of my parents have some apologizing to do before they'll be allowed back in my good graces. I am happy I did everything I did yesterday without speaking a word to my mother. There's something poetic about it. My husband still very much wants to have a come to Jesus. He asked if he can cold cock Bill if he ever sees him again or at least slap him to the ground. He is also adamant that I am owed apologies from my parents individually and that they need to change their behaviors. I can't express how grateful I am to have a man like him in my life. He told me he'd do this 100 times if it was what I needed. I know this is just the start in a lot of ways. Yesterday was like getting to the peak of Mount Everest. I still have to get down the mountain, but the worst of it is over. How OP is doing now? Thank you for the virtual mom hug. I've blown the bubble up, and my entire family isn't speaking to me. They're treating me as though I'm the one who did something wrong and owes an apology. But I already feel lighter. It hurts, but I think I'm seeing things more clearly than I ever have. I have an insanely supportive husband, and my mill has been moaming pretty hard, plus an appointment with a psychologist early next week. Mini update from today when OP posted in her comments. Sister has turned on you too. We haven't spoken since I told her 8 days ago. So it's been almost radio silence from the entire nuclear family since my dad texted yesterday asking if I was coming for Thanksgiving. Now no. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I texted with my dad, and he said she is doing better. I've texted my sister twice now with no response. I'm thankful for some really solid people in my life who are showering me with love and support right now. I'm gonna get my confidence back, hold my head up high, and move forward in the way I know I was raised, even if my folks are being hypocritical. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My ex cheated on me with my childhood best friend. So here's my story about how I lost the love of my life, C, and my best friend J all in one day. It all started when I met C in grade 5, and I had a crush on her for years, never gaining the talk to her or anything as I was just figuring out these feelings. Plus I knew I was an introvert from the beginning, barely having any real friends besides a small group of 4, one of them being my best friend Jay. We did everything a kid could do together. Go camping, something I didn't like but was fun with him. Play video games, board games, sleepovers, all those things, and thought of him as a brother. It was he who had the courage to add her to our friend group. We grew closer as we got older. It was only in grade 11 that me and C were starting to get closer as friends. During high school, when we were both in grade 10, I finally gained the courage to ask C out. To my surprise and happiness, she said yes. Our first date was amazing as I took her out to her favorite restaurant, which wasn't really expensive but did have a big bill. Then we went skating, as she has always loved that, and that was one of the best memories I've ever had. Over the next 4 years, we had the best relationship, or at least what I thought was the best. It was only during year 3 of our relationship that C wanted to go to the next level, and so did I, but I was just so nervous about it that I never realized what was happening between my GF and BF until it was too late. I was also stressed from the SATs that I didn't have enough time to spend with her either. It all came to a screeching halt when I not only passed my SATs, my nervousness about having sex went away with the letter, and I walked to her apartment to tell her the great news. I entered the elevator to go to her floor and walked to her door when I noticed it was open slightly, and so in a panic, I opened the door myself, not thinking straight and thinking she was in trouble, but found nothing. I walked around the apartment, but eventually, I noticed the trail of clothes leading up to her bedroom door. If those weren't obvious, then the moans and screams of pleasure were. That was until I noticed a jacket on the ground, the very same one I gave Jay on his 18th birthday. I saw only red when I thought that and barged into a room where they were both shocked at my interruption. But C soon screamed in terror as I pulled Jay off of her and started beating him. I was never a violent person growing up, but this rage and betrayal turned me into someone I hope I could never be again. It's been 2 weeks since I caught Jay and C together, and I've been ignoring every message they sent me, every call and voicemail they made, and have even ignored their family's attempts at getting me to speak to them. I couldn't stand to be in the same room with them anymore. Every time I think of them, I just remember that day when I caught them. Hope you guys have any advice about what I should do next with them, 'cause I don't. Update. So here's my update on my situation. Sorry this took a bit, but I decided to just look at the future for myself now after everything that's happened. So on to the date. As many of you pointed out, I had to get the truth about our breakup before the two of them vilified me. To my, and possibly your, surprise, they didn't say anything about me, but they also didn't out themselves. The two of them kept quiet about the whole thing, and I couldn't stand that, watching as if nothing happened between the three of us. So I contacted as many of our mutual friends as I could to tell them. Some believed me, others thought I was in the wrong, and a few were indifferent, but all looked at Jay and C differently after the day, as I had many details of what they did while those fed. After I outed the two of them, I realized I needed to get away from the city. I lived here my whole life, but I had to get away. I just couldn't stand being close to C and Jay anymore. I was simply getting boxes of my stuff ready to move when I could, and I hear a knock at the door, and wouldn't you know, C was standing right outside. Her eyes were just bloodshot, and she looks like she hasn't slept in days. I barely opened it for her anyways, so I just rudely asked, "What are you doing here?" 'Cause I'm not about to be gracious towards her and never will again. She asked to be let in to talk for a minute, and I decided to do so, but not to take her back, to just hear the excuses I know she'll come up with. She started to cry, asking for forgiveness and wanted to explain why she did what she did. I kept a straight face and didn't say a word while she was speaking. She told me how she felt neglected because of the lack of sex between us, which I guess is true. She went on to say that Jay comforted her and slowly began to fall for him as the days went on, and one thing led to another, and I had caught them soon after they became physical. After she was done, I told her that if she fell for Jay, all she had to tell me was that she wanted to break up, and I would have accepted them getting together afterwards, but they didn't do so. Instead, I saw my first love in bed with my best friend. I told her I was moving away after this, that I couldn't stand being in the city anymore with C and Jay or their family, but I didn't tell her where 'cause I don't want her to follow me. I saw the tears flowing even faster as she heard that. Guess she thought that we could reconcile after what happened. Well, sorry C, but I got other plans than take you back after that. I just held on to her hand. She gained a hopeful look in her eyes and led her to the door before pushing her out. She turned towards me, pure sadness in her eyes. "I'll love you again. Go back to Jay. I'm sure he'll be happy to accept you fully after all he already did." So I slammed the door in her face after that and heard her crying outside, but didn't care and just continued to relax and pack my stuff. As for Jay, well, never bothered with him again. Didn't speak to him, didn't respond to any of his messages. Nothing. I'm done with them and nothing will change that. So that's my update. Nothing too big. But hey, don't really care right now to make this my whole life story, so goodbye and have a nice day. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My husband posted my body online. I'm just in shock. Last Friday, I, 34F, spent my evening with my obligatory fake name, K, a young friend, 24F, from work, as she wanted to discuss something personal with me. I didn't think anything of it, as we do have a very personal relationship outside of work as well. As soon as I arrived at her place, the tension in the air was thick. She explained that she wanted to discuss a serious matter with me, but that she didn't know how to go about it. I told her to just rip the band-aid off and tell me. She told me that she had found 2 recordings of a woman she believed to be me on a pornographic website. I told her that wouldn't be possible, but she was adamant that I was the woman in the recording, and she was right. I've never recorded myself naked or having sex with my husband, but there I was in 2 recordings of 7 minutes and 4 minutes, both of them recorded in our old bedroom. As I rewatched every second of it, it starts to dawn on me that this was my husband's doing, but I pushed that deep down because there must be a reasonable explanation for this. Honestly, I left her place with my mind in a complete meltdown. I could barely hear what she was saying, but she did follow up with a text saying she's been in contact with the website about getting it taken down and that she'll help me go through this. She also said she's scouring the internet in case there are more out there. I came home and pretty much ransacked my house looking for evidence, and I found it. My husband was using a hidden spy camera to spy on me and record me in my most intimate moments. I then just spent hours vomiting, crying, projectile vomiting some more, and begging God to just let this be a nightmare. I am a deeply religious and a fully veiled Muslim woman, and I've never been with anyone but my husband, and all this time he has been sharing my most intimate moments with the world. I don't know what to think or what to do. I can't look at him or speak to him. I've locked myself in our bedroom pretending I have COVID. All I do is look up how other people have dealt with getting things removed, and it seems like once it's on the internet it really is forever. Even if I remove it from this one website, I've been crying nonstop. He truly must be something demonic, as he is right now talking about ordering in some of my favorites to see if I have an appetite since I haven't been eating well. I am so unbelievably hurt. I don't know how to share this with my family, how to ask for help. I am crippled with shame, anger, and pain. Answering some questions. 1. My husband, soon to be ex-husband, and I are the same religion, race, ethnicity, and nationality. 2. My culture does not participate in honor killings, and I'm not afraid of my family harming me or not siding with me. 3. My family would support me in divorcing him. In fact, they would demand I do. 4. The laws in my country are secular, but in certain circumstances, it allows for the various religious groups in the country to hold their own courts that can enforce their rulings as long as it doesn't impose or break secular law or civil liberties. 5. I do plan on taking this to secular court and religious court as I want him punished. 6. I am veiled by choice, and the vast majority of my fellow countrywomen do not veil. 7. I am a niqab hobby, meaning the only part of me visible to the public are my eyes when I am with my family or with other women / in women-only spaces. I don't veil. 8. Kate and I do not share the same religion nor dress alike, and yet we are friends. Update. I left him as I said I would. He went to work, the movers arrived, we packed my stuff, and we left. The entire time I was crying to the point that even the movers were worried for me, but I couldn't stop myself from crying. I went home, sat my parents and siblings down, and explained the situation. My parents were, and still are, confused. They are elderly and fragile. They don't understand the internet. They just keep saying, okay, let's talk to the people and it will be gone. But my siblings understand. They are angry, they are sad, and heartbroken on my behalf. My siblings and brother-in-laws took me home. We waited for him and well, we had a conversation with him. He denied it at first, so my brothers were firm with him, and he started to be more truthful. He said he did it because he was depressed because he had a porn addiction, sex addiction, and because he didn't think anyone would see it. He said he posted only a few. When we asked him to be specific, he said he posted anything from 5 to 8. We had him take it down, but who knows how many times it has been downloaded or shared. In that moment, I also found out he had a secret phone. He was also cheating on me with random women and sex workers all this time. I was thinking he's working hard, but nope. He was out disgracing himself and betraying our marriage. At some point, he convinced us he needed to use the bathroom, and he somehow managed to call his mother, who arrived at our home with his brother and cousins. There was a commotion as they were angry at the treatment of their family member. Then things calmed down enough to explain to them what he had done. His mother fainted. His mother is elderly and not in the greatest health condition. We called for an ambulance. My neighbor had also called the police and I was arrested. By the time the ambulance arrived to take care of my mother-in-law, I spent the evening locked up. I didn't exactly have a polite conversation with him, so yes, I was arrested for assaulting him, specifically slapping him, and he refused to press charges. I got released the next morning and went home to my parents. I cried some more because my parents kept crying. Then a few days later, I spoke to some lawyers my sister had contacted, as they had experience with non-consensual material being posted online. They have been handling things with the police as I did press charges, and they are dealing with websites. I also have started the process of divorce. I went to the clinic and got tested, and luckily he didn't give me anything so far, but I have another test scheduled just to make sure. I have spoken to his mother, and she apologized to me, even though it's not her fault. She told me that she understood why I want him punished. She asked that I let it stay in the hands of the law rather than I hurt him or have him hurt. He's in hiding, but he still calls and texts me from random numbers. He still lies and tries to manipulate me. I've just been documenting everything he says and texts to me. Oh, at this point, everyone knows, everyone, even little kids, and I feel more humiliated now than I did at first. Update 2. This man has destroyed everything I have worked for and has completely destroyed the very little sense of stability and safety I had left. I had to resign from my job, a job that I loved. Jobs don't come easy for me with the way that I look. I can't work there anymore because I'm a potential danger to the children and staff since perverted men have started to harass me at work. I work with vulnerable children, and mothers who have heard about me have started to refuse me working with their children. Some don't want me to be involved with their child because their husbands can't stop being weird. Fathers have leered at me or made lewd comments toward me, and one of them even offered me money to sleep with him. Men have catcalled me with greater frequency than ever before. Men stare at me. A man followed me from my dentist office and groped me on the street. Random men call my phone, my family home, and office to verbally abuse me because my husband has posted my address, my personal and work email, phone numbers, workplace address, and every other bit of information online. It is as if the eyes and judgment of the entire world are on me. Yes, the great majority of people are sympathetic, kind, and in support of me. Many people have reached out in support of me, from old classmates to former colleagues, neighbors, members of my religious community, family friends, his family, and many, many more have expressed solidarity and kindness. But the crazies and perverts who believe him and are like him are bolder, louder, and much more noticeable. Then I find out from my lawyers and their investigators that he was drugging me and assaulting me as I slept. I suffer from migraines and insomnia and take medication for it. He saw my medication as an opportunity to drug me with my own prescriptions. He was actually bragging on a forum where other perverts congregate, how he was so clever for drugging me with my own medication, and they were encouraging him to do more things to me. My soon-to-be ex-husband has also decided to spread rumors that I was aware of the cameras and pressured him into posting online, and there are people who believe him. He also changed his mind about not pressing charges. I went to court. The judge and prosecutors were sympathetic and dismissed the case. It was a combination of my lawyers explaining the circumstances that led to me slapping him and his subsequent actions, threatening me, attacking me, doxing me, and blackmailing me by saying he didn't care about the slap and that he would drop everything if I forgave him. My lawyers used his own words against him since he wrote it in text and on a recorded call. He admitted to me not having slapped him that hard and that he only pressed charges to cause me harm. But his crimes against me are still being investigated by the prosecutors. I uploaded this before, but it was deleted for some reason. Update 3. I wish I could say I was feeling better or doing better, but I feel awful, and I am still struggling with everything. It is still his life's mission to be as cruel as he can be and to stand in the way of every step I make. He is still refusing to work with my divorce lawyer. He continues to be difficult every step of the way and has run off his own lawyers. He is now on his third lawyer, and we are again starting from scratch in the divorce negotiations. He has been granted an extension by the courts due to his last lawyer dropping him a few days before our hearing. As for posting non-consensual material, a trial date was scheduled, and he recently asked for an extension, and he'll probably be granted it as his criminal lawyer dropped him too. So in the last month, he has been dropped by his divorce lawyer and his criminal lawyer. The man is on a roll. When it rains, it pours. My father passed a little over a month ago, and my mother is now in hospice care as she is soon to go back to God. I'm sad but not shocked about this, as I've had a long time to prepare for it. My father had been battling cancer for almost 3 years and so was as prepared as a person can be. My mother's health had been declining significantly for years due to her dementia. My soon-to-be ex-husband decided it was a great idea to corner me at the venue we held the after-funeral meal at. He decided to wait for me to be alone. He approached me as I was cleaning up the venue. I was on my own, and at that time I was kind of exhausted and could not muster up the rage to chase him off as I had done many times before, so I just let him talk. He seemed almost decent as he was giving his million excuses on why things were the way they were. He cried about how awful he feels for hurting me. Then he started telling me about how he always felt I was better than him in everything as I made more money, was better educated, had been better traveled than him, and that he felt jealous of my confidence and how in the beginning these were things that he was most attracted to, but as our relationship and marriage progressed, these were the things he started to dislike about me. He also said that he was angry that I refused to consider being a stay-at-home wife and mother, even though he knew from the beginning that I wasn't the stay-at-home/homemaker type. He said that he tried to be a good husband, but that my refusal to bend or let him have the last say in things was the catalyst for his anger and need to humiliate me. He talked about how he had always had an addiction issue, but he thought that if he was married, he would be cured of his depression, his porn and sex addiction, and he felt like if I ever found out, I would have never married him and or would divorce him, and that angered him and pushed him to want to punish me for thinking I was better than him. He was jealous and angry about so many things, but when I said to him, "So you hurt me because you felt jealous and inadequate in comparison," he lost his mind and started to shout and say that he knew I would react that way. I decided to refrain from commenting further and just let him spill his guts uninterrupted for 3 hours. He made excuse after excuse for why he did what he did, but it all comes down to him feeling inferior to me, him being jealous and angry that I dared have a mind and life of my own. He said right before our wedding, he joined a men's group online that were helping him deal with his porn and sex addiction, and one tip given was to make your own porn and watch it instead, but he knew I'd never agree to it, so it was my fault he needed to spy on me, and that he never intended to share it with others, but one day I had angered him so much in his payback he posted it and he felt good. And so every time I emasculated him by having my own mind or upset him in some way or another, he would post more. Eventually, he gained a following and had so many men asking him to post more. He started to like the fact that other men looked up to him for his sexual prowess, and at the same time his sex addiction started to come back and he fell back into his habit of picking up women, and when he couldn't get it for free he'd hire a sex worker. Then I guess it spiraled out of control for him. The more he spent on his addictions, the more lies he told, the more he felt like a failure for me covering our expenses, the more he resented me, and he got stuck in a cycle of self-destruction, which in turn only fueled his anger with me. He also says he joined a support group for addicts and started going to an addiction rehabilitation clinic as an outpatient to deal with his issues, and that I should give him credit for that. He feels that I should be proud of him for doing that and that I should take him back since he's putting in so much work. He also feels I should appreciate him not stalking me since my dad died, and he is sincere in feelings this way. He genuinely doesn't understand why I'm not seeing how hard he's been trying the past few months. In his deluded mind, he thinks that his honesty and conversation should count for something, and that I am just being a heartless jerk for having been stoic and unmoved by his tears in a show of vulnerability. Even though he gave a great performance of being human during our conversation, I remained unmoved by it because there was nothing to be moved about. I just continued to pack things up from the venue and got in my car and went home. I'm still not working. I still have crazy men calling my phone at all hours of the day, and I still feel humiliated and embarrassed. The only good thing that has happened is that several of the sites have taken down the recordings and banned him from using their platforms. Final update. Finally, I have some good news. So a while back, I was granted a restraining order/protective order, and my now officially ex-husband did continue to stalk and harass me. After the nth time of calling the police and going to court, he was finally imprisoned, and he has been in prison for a little over a month. I was also granted my divorce. I initially wanted a quick divorce and wanted to just give him everything he asked for, but he kept finding ways to delay or asking for more and more, and I just snapped. So I told my lawyers to do their worst, and they did. My lawyers hated him, and I got everything I wanted and way more. Not to gloat, but it was really satisfying seeing him cry. This has been the most peaceful month I've had in a long time. This entire time has been such a trying time, and it has affected my mental and physical health. I've lost 12 kilograms, and I've lost a ton of hair due to the stress he was causing me. But I can honestly say that wailing in court was the chicken soup my soul needed. I've moved from my city and now live on the other side of the country, and I've gotten myself a decent enough job. I am slowly mending my confidence. I am in therapy and I can't say it's working right now, but I know if I stick with it, it will. The non-consensual material he posted has been removed from the more reputable websites he posted on, and my lawyers were able to get me monetarily compensated as these companies didn't want to go to court over it. I mean, money doesn't really change things that much, and I am still hurt, but it's something. I'm also not so delusional as to think that it isn't still out there in some way or another, and I know there really isn't much I could ever do about that, so I'm just trying to make peace with it. My ex-husband will be serving time in prison for what he did. My lawyers are working with the courts, and that should be sorted soon enough. I think the reality of the consequences are becoming very clear to him, as I have heard through the grapevine that he attempted to commit suicide and is now in protective custody until his trial date. He is facing up to 30 years in corporal punishment, and I absolutely look forward to it. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.